Welcome to the Next Generation of Parks event by the Minneapolis Parks Foundation. My name is Tom Evers, and I am thrilled that you're joining us tonight. I'm excited about tonight's program, and though I cannot see your faces, I can see that we have more than 200 people joining us already and climbing. We had over 400 people signed up, and we are so grateful that you chose to join us on this lovely evening. Before I begin talking a little bit about the Minneapolis Parks Foundation and the Next Generation of Parks event itself and introducing our featured guests, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that where we are and the land we're on. The Minneapolis Park System is located on traditional, ancestral, and contemporary lands of Indigenous people. And in the spirit of truth and equity, and with gratitude and humility, we acknowledge that we're on the sacred homelands of the Dakota and the Anishinaabe people specifically, who continue to be stewards of the land here. We honor, we pay respect to their ancestors past, to the present, and the future, and we recognize their continuing presence in their homelands as well as in the tribal communities worldwide. This acknowledgement, and it's important to note this, requires for those of us who are settlers to recognize our own place and responsibilities towards addressing the inequities, and that this ongoing work and challenging work requires that we commit to real engagement with the Dakota and the Anishinaabe communities here in Minnesota. Tonight is just one of those moments. Before I introduce our guests, I want to just take a few moments to talk a little bit about the Minneapolis Parks Foundation. We are an independent nonprofit, and our mission is to transform human lives through parks and public space by aligning philanthropic investment with community vision. We do not do this work alone. We work alongside the public and private partners, including our continuing and enduring partner, the Minneapolis Park and Rec Board, the City of Minneapolis, many community organizations and individuals who love our parks and our city and want our parks to aspire to be the best they can be and to serve everyone. We believe that parks have the power to connect us, to heal us, and to make us whole. So in the coming weeks, we will be introducing with the park board 2 new public spaces, 2 new parks that we've been working on for many years. And many of you who are joining us tonight have been part of that. I am so looking forward to, in the month of May, welcoming people with the park board onto the Water Works site, a dynamic new public space in the heart of downtown's riverfront and at the edge of the Stone Arch Bridge. It will be the home to our guest tonight's new restaurant, Owamni. It will be a place where more than 2.6 million people will pass each year, and we are so excited to see each and every one of you help us activate that space. Further upriver, the Minneapolis Parks Foundation is working with the community and the park board to create a new space that is also opening in May, an overlook at 26th Avenue North at the edge of the Great Northern Greenway. This will be the first new connection linking North Minneapolis to the Mississippi River as parkland in nearly 15 years. Many of you who are joining us tonight and many others helped us deliver these 2 parks by contributing to the River First Capital campaign and supporting our ongoing program and operations. On behalf of our board, our staff, and the community, thank you. We could not do this work without your financial support and all of the work that people put into doing this. Beyond River First, the Parks Foundation contributes to community-led efforts through People for Parks Fund. We work with the community on envisioning how our parks can grow. And we host this series, the Next Generation of Park Lecture event series, where we bring people who are doing great work, engaging, activating, programming, designing our parks for the next generation. It is one of my favorite parts, and I so look forward to seeing each of you again in person when we come back to the world, the public life, the civic life. But we are thrilled that you chose to join us tonight for this. And there is no stronger connection to the land than through food. And so that's why I am so excited to have Sean and Dana be our guests tonight as speakers for the Next Generation of Park Lecture Series, event series. They've stepped forward as partners, and before we bring them on. I'm going to allow our host, Megan Burks, to formally introduce them, but I just want to say how thrilled and grateful I am we are to have their partnership in activating this new space at Water Works. It is going to be profound and astounding. I also want to, before we go on, I want to just thank our partners. We have great folks coming together, help put this together. This event tonight is hosted in part, sponsored by Friends of the Falls. They've contributed to our work, but they are engaging in important work to reconsider the land around the St. Anthony Falls Lock and Dam and look at how that land can be reintegrated into our city through parks and a public space. I want to thank them for that, for being part of this tonight. And then I want to thank Minnesota Public Radio, who's been an enduring partner with us through the Next Generation Park Lecture Series, event series, who enhance our programs every time by having hosts who come and elevate the conversation. Tonight, we're going to be joined by Megan Burks. She will be coming on here soon as an associate producer of All Things Considered and NPR News. And what that means is that she fills in the blank spaces for the audience to add some levity. And that's whether she's helping people understand the climate science through Climate Cast, or squeezing a little levity and curiosity through the appetite segment. You've probably heard her work. And I can say through those two, I'm a fan as well. Before joining NPR News, Megan covered education, health, and immigration as a reporter at KPS in San Diego. And she will be coming on to help introduce Sean and Dana. Hello, Megan. Welcome. And as Megan comes on, I'll just say that we'll be stepping off. And for the next hour, I'm looking forward to the conversation. Thank you for being our host. And I'll be back on at the end, but I'm going to hand it off and take it away.
Thank you. Yeah, and I also want to acknowledge that here I'm at NPR headquarters in downtown St. Paul, that I am also on traditional Dakota and Anishinaabe land. And I also wanted to say that I'm really excited to be here. I moved here from San Diego a few years ago, and I think the Minneapolis parks actually played a really instrumental role in that. I found myself here on a work trip one beautiful fall day in a park, and unbeknownst to me, I was there on the last day of the season. So the whole community was out. There was music, food, drinks, babies dancing. And I just looked at my partner and we both agreed we're going to move Minneapolis to the top of our list of places to look for work and to move. And so here I am a few years later at the start of what's going to be another really amazing park season, even though I now know that every season is park season in Minnesota. But this spring and this summer is going to be especially great for so many reasons, not the least of which is the experience and the new offering that we're here to talk about today. So I wanted to go ahead and introduce our guests. They're going to have a presentation for us, and then we'll open it up to questions and answers afterward. So our first guest has been cooking all over the world for the last 30 years, focusing specifically on revitalizing and bringing awareness to Indigenous food systems in a modern context. He is Oglala Lakota, born in Pine Ridge, South Dakota, and among many, many, many things, he studied Native American farming techniques, wild foods, harvesting, land stewardship, and Native culture and history. He's a First Peoples Fund Fellow and a Bush Foundation Fellow. He won the National Center's first American Entrepreneurship Award and 2 James Beard Awards. You may know him as the face of the Sioux Chef. He's been bringing his knowledge and Indigenous foods to the Twin Cities under that moniker since 2014. I'm talking, of course, about Sean Sherman. Thanks for being here today. Our second speaker is a lineal descendant of the Wahpeton, Sisseton, and Midwakaton Dakota tribes and a lifelong Minnesota native. She's worked for nearly a decade within the food sovereignty movement and is co-owner and chief operating officer of the Sioux Chef, a real equal partner in that work, and has been bringing her expertise to the Twin Cities for a long time. She's co-founder and executive director of the nonprofit Natives, which stands for North American Traditional Indigenous Food Systems. And through that, she focuses her expertise on addressing and treating ancestral trauma through decolonized perspectives of honoring and leveraging Indigenous wisdom. So Dana Thompson, thank you for being here with us today. And I'll go ahead and hand it over to you.
Hamitakiape. My name is Dana Thompson, and I think that introduction really spoke volumes, but Sean and I own the company, the Sioux Chef, and we also founded the nonprofit Natives. Sean is the culinary director of Natives, and I act now as the executive director. And we're just really happy to be here tonight. We have some great stories to share with you. I know there's a lot of excitement about this restaurant, which is so humbling and awesome for us. And we're really excited to just knock it out of the park. I think I'm going to tell a little bit of my story as we're going through the slides, Sean. So you can go ahead and introduce yourself too.
All right. My name is Sean Sherman. And yeah, we're excited to be able to tell you guys, whoever's watching, a little bit about kind of what's going on, you know, a little bit about the restaurant that we're super excited about, a little bit about why we chose the name and the history of the land, and just a little bit of the history of the site in general. And just really excited. And we just also want to just talk about what our philosophy is and, you know, some of our projects, and just kind of give you guys a whole overview. So we're going to jump into a PowerPoint and just run through it. And then we're going to be able to do some questions and answers at the end. But we're just super excited for everybody to come and see how beautiful the place is coming together. And it's really just, you know, a matter of weeks before it's open to the public. So it's a little crazy, but we're going to get there. So give me 2 seconds while I share our screen and play. All right. So, you know, we started the Sioux Chef back in 2014. Dana came on pretty quickly after I opened it, and we've been running. So we've had a lot of projects over the past few years. We had our food truck called Tatanka Truck that we ran around the city with. We created a nice little team. We catered for quite a few years up until the pandemic. And then we started our nonprofit, which we'll kind of get into later. But we're most excited to talk to you guys today about this particular restaurant concept that we've been working on for, it feels like forever. And we're just really excited. So Owamni by the Sioux Chef, we're basically, just to give you a little background of what that name means, we're really excited to name the restaurant after what is these beautiful waterfalls that once existed right there, which were later named St. Anthony Falls. So Owamni Yamni, or place of the swirling waters, whirlpools, and waterfalls, is just a really sacred space. It's such a sacred space for the Dakota people that they named the entire Mississippi after these waterfalls. So Hahawakfa means the river of the falls. And we're just really excited that our first restaurant happens to be overlooking this extremely sacred space, and that we're going to be able to share this Indigenous perspective of the space as we move forward. Because there has been, you know, there was a Dakota encampment, which, you know, today would have been basically Washington and First, about somewhere in that area, or in Washington and Hennepin, I mean.
Hennepin.
So it's kind of right there in that region. So it's really like we're just a few blocks from where this encampment and then village had been for so long. And Dana, do you want to talk a little bit about why this is special to you?
Sure. So when we won the bid for when they put out the request for proposals for submitting as a vendor, and we won that, Sean and I spent some time searching for the name, and Sean loves reading and was going through all sorts of books. And one day, I don't know if you even remember this, but you were sitting on the couch and you said, "Hey, isn't your uncle named Clem Felix?" And I said, "Yes." And he goes, "It's so weird. I found him in this book, but it says he passed away in 1974. And I said, "Oh, that's my grandfather." And he said, "Well, they have the name of that space as Owamni by in this beautiful book." and it's dedicated to your grandfather. And I had heard about this book, Where the Waters Gather and the Rivers Meet, as I was growing up, and I knew it was significant, but I'd never been able to see a copy because it's a very rare book. And in this slide, you can see my grandfather in the forefront with his wife, my grandmother Florence, and that's my mother Anne, when she was 18 years old. And behind them stands Paul Durant. And Paul Durant was a gentleman who spoke French and English in his childhood home. And my grandfather spoke French, Dakota, and English in his childhood home. And they became friends, and Paul Durant recognized that a lot of the native names, especially for the waterways, were disappearing in the 1950s and 60s. And he asked my grandfather if he would partner up with him and hike through all of this beautiful land to capture all of those beautiful names. And ultimately it became this book. And as you can see in the book, it lists Owamni or Owamni as the name of the space, along with a really wonderful story. And so this—
And it shares the Anishinaabe name, which is Kichi Kakabika, or the Great Severed Rock, which was also their name for Minneapolis. And there's a nice little legend about Clouded Day woman and her spirit who still lives within the waters there.
Absolutely. And so for our family, this is a really significant and wonderful text, and it's really rare. They're difficult to find the book. It's not in print anymore. We luckily wound up somehow, after looking for years, with 2 copies within the same month.
Yeah, but the book comes with this wonderful map of all of the indigenous names of the waterways in such a huge area of what is Minnesota. So it's just such a really special place. And, you know, the waterfalls were so beautiful for so long, but they, of course, this is circa 1890. And over time, especially with the growth of Minneapolis and the industrialization of the area, they become more and more deteriorated over time until basically you get what we see today, which is the concrete skirtings. But it's still got such rich, beautiful history, and we're just really excited again to be able to be right on the shores of this unique spot.
And in this image, you can see Spirit Island, and you know that would have been right in front of where the restaurant is today. And it was a really super sacred space for the Dakota peoples. There's a lot of documentation of eagles swooping and fish jumping out of the water, and a lot of sacred ceremony happening in this space. And in the next slide, you can see them quarrying it and disassembling it to make a lot of the buildings around it. So it's a tragic story, but it was there, and we are here to remember it.
That's true. And you know where our space is, you know, in the really old times, we're on the footprints of 2 spaces, which is the Columbia Flour Mill and the Bassett Sawmill. But then later in 1968, they opened up Fujiya, which was this wonderful Japanese restaurant. And you know, Fujiya later brought in the first form of sushi in 1981 to Minneapolis.
Wow.
And it was it's a pretty amazing restaurant, which is what they created. And it's a really cool story. The Minnesota Historical Society has a really beautiful piece written about just the history of this building particularly. But over time, again, like it sat dormant for quite a while until it kind of fell into ruin. And as we, it was hard to visualize what it could be. And we were kind of with the park board from the very beginning and seeing all the different drawings and iterations of what it could possibly be. But again, it was really hard to see. But they really wanted to preserve some of the history of some of the foundations of the flour mills and sawmills that were attached there. I'm really excited that they did such a beautiful job that today, this is just from this winter here, and you know it's getting closer and closer every single day. But you can see how amazing that this building is looking right now, you know, and how much work and effort was put into making something so beautiful. You can see these beautiful outdoor fireplaces where we'll be able to have people sitting around and enjoying a little bit of a campfire as they're eating some food or sipping on something, and this beautiful green roof patio that's going to overlook the river right there, and just all the accents that went into making something super unique. And for us, we're mostly excited because we've been working so hard, and this is our first brick and mortar, that we're just excited to be able to launch really the first full scale Indigenous food restaurant, so our focus obviously is Native American foods, and we just wanted to share a little bit of our philosophy around that so you guys can understand what that even means, because there's always been a lot of question, and Dana always calls it ironically foreign to too many people, but it's really the food of where we are, and no matter where we are in North America, all of North America's history begins with Indigenous history, and I think it's really important to remember that all this land space, there's so much rich Indigenous culture that is unfortunately not taught to us so often. And even in the modern world today, our children get very little education about Indigenous peoples and Indigenous perspectives. So we're really excited to be able to share that through food, which is an amazing medium. So when we're looking at Indigenous foods and trying to understand what that means, it's really a study of understanding diversity, because when you look at North America and think about how amazingly diverse it is with all of these mountain ranges and Great Plains and everything, tropical areas and subarctic areas, and it just goes on and on. There's just so much amazing diversity of plants and animals throughout this. And then when you layer Indigenous peoples on it, you can see the amazing diversity that's still alive today. And one way we look at that is through a language map. So if you look at an Indigenous language map, you can see that every few hundred miles you're in a different language. There's different stories and mythologies, and there's different foods and flavors. And it's just really amazing, because today, in today's world, we still have 634 tribes in Canada, 574 in the US, and 20% of Mexico identifies as Indigenous, which are huge numbers. So when you compare, colonial settler states to Indigenous territories, there's just no comparison. Like, we should be really focused on our amazing diversity of who and where we are, and the rich histories that lie around us and are still thriving today because of our Indigenous people, our Indigenous families that are still here and carrying those stories forward. So for us, we're just trying to utilize ourselves as role models to help reclaim Indigenous food and health through culture. So part of the work that we did was we just tried to remove colonial ingredients that didn't exist here before. So we removed dairy, wheat flour, cane sugar, even typically beef, pork, and chicken, and just really wanted to showcase food that paid homage to our ancestors, and just really kind of opened up to a lot more flavors around us, because we see the world being so vibrant in our environments. And Minnesota, like, once you start to learn the plants and the names of the plants around us, you just see nothing but food and flavor. And it's just amazing to think about how many new flavor combinations we'll be able to come up with. There's just so much food around us, and taking the time to make Indigenous pantries to make food taste exactly like where we are, and having quite a few years under a belt of attempting, other business models and playing with that. And we're just really excited that we've been creating such a wonderful team. And, there's just the sky's going to be the limit, literally, for us as we, create a really focused team to create all sorts of wonderful food and flavors that, again, are kind of ironically foreign to a lot of people. But we've had a lot of fun. And, we're just beginning, and there's just so much opportunity for that. And I think we should probably just talk a little bit about the nonprofit.
Absolutely.
So Dana and I formed our nonprofit called NATIVS, which is an acronym for North American Traditional Indigenous Food Systems. And we set up inside the Midtown Global Market in Minneapolis, which is also another cool historical site inside the big Sears building down there on Lake Street. And we're really focused on we really want to help develop more Indigenous culinary infrastructure out there, because we live in a world where we should have Indigenous restaurants in every single city across the nation. You have huge food capitals of the world like Manhattan and Chicago and LA, and there are 0 Indigenous restaurants that feature foods of those exact regions. So it's insane to think that because of this colonial history of the United States, that it's so thick that we haven't even gotten to the stage yet where there are no Native American restaurants everywhere, and we just really want to help to break that mold and to showcase a path for more Indigenous chefs and more Indigenous restaurants in the future. And we really truly believe that this can help a lot of Indigenous communities, and we just really want to do everything we can to help develop more just infrastructure when it comes to helping people grow and helping Indigenous communities grow. So our main focuses are creating access to Indigenous education and creating access to Indigenous foods through our nonprofit. And you can find our kitchen at Midtown Global Market, like I said, at the Indigenous Food Lab, which has been a really really fun project. We've been so busy because we've been doing a lot of food relief. We've been doing 10,000 meals a week out of that tiny kitchen with a small staff, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that is a little bit of a misunderstanding is that through the Indigenous Food Lab right now, since we opened during a pandemic, we don't have a public facing brick and mortar there. You can't actually walk up and purchase something yet. We're trying to develop that for the future. And so Owamni is going to be the first place where you can actually walk up and purchase something. So throughout the pandemic, we've just been using it as a food relief program and a place for us to develop our education, which we've been doing.
Absolutely. So we have a lot of plans for the Indigenous Food Lab, and we really thought it was important to work in an urban community. But it's really, it's a highly productive Indigenous focused kitchen, and we're creating an educational studio so we can teach about all facets of Indigenous foodways. So seed saving and farming techniques and wild foods and ethnobotany and medicinals and culinary and food preservation and history and language and crafting. There's just so much education involved with that piece that we're really excited to share with people, and we'll be able to utilize this space at Owamni to continue our education and to partner with our staff over there too. But our goal actually with the Indigenous Food Lab is to work directly with tribal communities and helping them to develop, helping them to develop their own Indigenous culinary operations for their community, because our Indigenous foods are so healthy. Since we cut out dairy and flour and sugar, especially, we're gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free, soy-free, pork-free. It's just like an ideal diet, and we can really have a lot of health impact, especially in some of these rural communities where they struggle with so much foodborne illnesses and nutritional access. So we just really want to create a new system for training people to eat more culturally and regionally appropriate foods, and just put a lot of health and nutrition back onto people's plates and get it into people's homes. Yeah. So we're excited that we have this Indigenous-led kitchen where we can do all sorts of training and education. We prioritize purchasing from Indigenous producers first across the state, but we also support our local food scene heavily. So we're very much extreme locavores when it comes down to it. We also just, we're just creating a whole new generation of Indigenous food professionals. And we're hoping that we can influence a lot of these smaller communities to have more Indigenous community gardens, and just think about permaculture designs, and just like thinking about putting food everywhere, so we can utilize more of this amazing bounty of wild flavors around us, So we have a lot of educational pieces out there already, like our cookbook, which won the James Beard Award in 2018. Beth Dooley, which we love, helped us so much, and we were so excited that we got so much attention for this. But this book has over 100 recipes using the same philosophy that we're doing today, really reflecting on where we are. And we've just been working hard with our own education department, coming up with all sorts of amazing new modern Indigenous curriculum for people to share. And we just really want to help develop more Indigenous food producers and support them. Yeah. And eventually our goal is to actually open up Indigenous food labs in cities all across the nation, because we can see each one of those food labs being a regional center point for more training and development. And hopefully we can see more Indigenous restaurants opening, because the work we're doing is not about us. We're not too worried about what kind of awards we get or any of those kinds of things. Our work is really just about the next generation, because we really believe that we can do something and make a change, and that this next generation of children can grow up knowing what their cultural and Indigenous foods are, where they can find them, and how they're going to feel after they eat them, Right. And that's really the gist about Owamni. It's our first for-profit Indigenous restaurant brick and mortar, and we just feel like there's just so much opportunity for us as we move forward.
Absolutely. Owamni is going to be not just a place where you go to order some food, but it's a place where even people that don't realize that they're going to do it are going to walk away with some education. It's going to be really subtle, passive, and a beautiful, beautiful place for that.
Absolutely. So that's kind of the gist of the work that we're doing. And I'm going to stop sharing there with you guys. I think we're right on track with our timing.
Yeah, our timing is pretty good.
So,
are there really people out there? I can't tell.
Yeah, you guys should really be in radio with your timing. Really perfect. yeah, with the timing. And thank you so much for sharing your project. I mean, the vision behind it and just the deep, deep knowledge behind it is so apparent, and I'm really excited to see it. Um, I wanted just to invite our guests to submit questions and we'll get to them. But I wanted just to kind of throw out the first question, which is kind of talk me through what people will taste there. Is there a recipe that you can highlight or a dish that might make the menu, and what will people taste?
Well, we've been doing a lot of fun things. Last year, right after the George Floyd incident, we started helping out the community, especially the homeless encampments, because they exploded so largely last year, and then they are unfortunately largely indigenous around us in South Minneapolis. So we were in our Indigenous food lab kitchen. We were nixtamalizing hundreds of pounds of corn every week. Buying all these different varietals of corn from different tribes across the nation, and then buying tons of farm fresh vegetables and roasting those off and making these really wonderful grain bowls. So it was a mix of fresh hominy, or fresh nixtamalized corn, which is hominy, beans, quinoa, wild rice coming from the tribal communities up north of us, and then just, all sorts of fun stuff. So we have these beautiful sandwiches that we're creating out of corn that are similar to arepas, but it's kind of a mix of corn and wild rice. And it's really just fresh, healthy, not minimally produced food, I would say. And it's just a lot of flavors that people are really familiar with, because it's around them, but not necessarily flavors that they might see on their plates typically. So we use a lot of like wild white cedar that you see all over northern Minnesota and even down here. So when we were running the Tatanka truck, we had things like cedar maple tea was our main tea choice and main beverage choice. So we're going to have some really wonderful herbal North American tea choices. And it's just going to be a lot of fun. I think the sky's the limit. So we're going to be able to do a lot of events at this space later in the season. I know summer's going to be really busy for us, but it's going to be a beautiful event space towards the holidays. And then, I think we have a bunch of fun things planned for the wintertime when it's kind of people hunker down. But we're just creating a space where we can explore and grow ourselves. And I'm just excited what we can, all the recipes that we're going to come up with.
And I see someone is asking, where did the recipes come from? And I want to put tongue in cheek to say Sean's brain, but it's actually true. He has done an extraordinary amount of research and reading and talking to tribal community members, and looked at historical images. We've been really ingrained with the Minnesota Historical Society, and just looking at some of those images has really helped Sean expand his imaginary palette of what our ancestors were actually eating. And so he is an incredible chef and is really good at putting flavor profiles together. But what he does is he just looks at all the flavors that are around wherever he is and creates beautiful recipes that way. So
right, yeah, there's a lot out there. So
a big question that I think is at the top of everyone's mind is when can we expect it to open? Do you have a firm date or some rough dates?
We're waiting on a little bit of our licensing. We were really crossing our fingers we would be open towards the end of this month, and we're just going to wait and see. It might crawl into June a little bit, but it's really just a matter of a few weeks away at this point. So we're rushing and getting everything together and getting our staff ready to get hired. And there's a lot of tasks at hand, but we're just waiting on a couple of key pieces. So we're hoping we can announce a locked down opening date as soon as we get a couple of pieces back. So it's pretty close though.
We were originally hoping, we were shooting for May 1st, and then we were shooting for May 15th. And then this licensing thing was happening, and there were some longer lead times on some equipment purchases. There's even some long lead times on some furniture items that we're trying to figure it out, but we're grinding every day.
I don't know
until 10 o'clock at night.
I don't know if anybody's opened a restaurant out there, but we probably wouldn't suggest it.
Yeah, they're famously late openings.
It's a lot of work, but it's going to be completely worth it. And one thing we're also excited about is that the park board was so open to so many ideas. And one thing that really stuck out was we the plants that were chosen to go back in the park surrounding Waterworks and the building, and really focused on trying to choose a lot of the indigenous species that are natural to this region. And they're creating these beautiful signs. I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about that right away.
No,
but
I think it's fine.
Yeah, but they're creating these beautiful signs. So when people are walking around, you're going to see the Dakota name of the plants first, and then the English name, and then a little description of what those plants have been used for. So it's kind of like this really cool ethnobotanical educational walking tour that we'll be able to, that people will just be able to walk around and see, you know, and I think it's going to be important. So to see the original names of the plants, because that's what this is the land they're from, and those were their original names. So we should be learning those.
One thing that has been misconstrued a little bit as well is people think that we're going to be foraging the food in the park for our plates, and that's definitely not what's going to be happening. We aren't saying that people can't touch the plants, but we definitely want to keep them in the ground and keep them intact.
Yeah, education.
Absolutely.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah,
So.
we'll get our flavors from farm, 20 miles away.
Other producers.
Exactly.
Kind of on that same topic of the education component, it sounded like you'll eventually be running some classes out of the space. But I was really struck by just all of the historic photos that you showed during your presentation of that area. Is that something that people are going to be able to see and sort of understand when they're in the space? Talk me through kind of how it's going to help people learn more about the area.
Well, I think the park board has done such a great job. I think that there's going to be just a lot of opportunity to have more and more history there. And we're just really excited to be able to bring forward a lot of the indigenous perspective of the history, which is usually not talked about so much. But, we have a lot of friends at the Minnesota Historical Society, and I'm sure we can come up with some really beautiful pieces and pull some really beautiful photos to kind of accentuate the wonderful, rich history that's there from both the indigenous and non-indigenous historical pieces.
Absolutely.
I think that you guys are going to have a very successful grand opening because all of the questions I'm getting are about logistics. And so I'm going to throw those at you. I'm going to make sure we have enough time to get them answered. But I also wanted just to ask about sustainability. As a producer of Climate Cast, it's top of mind for me. It's top of mind for a lot of people. Can you talk about how what you're doing really kind of meshes with that sustainable, the need to be more sustainable?
Absolutely. I mean, because we truly believe there's so many positive lessons in learning how indigenous food systems work, because if you break it down, they're just hyper local, regional, and community-based food systems, and we just really think there's a lot of positivity that can come out of a deeper understanding of how indigenous peoples were able to survive for millennia, utilizing primarily plant knowledge of their region. So, being able to tie a lot of this education in, taking some of the lessons of indigenous peoples of just about being extremely resourceful, because some people might grow up and you learn about how indigenous peoples can break down a bison and use every single part of the animal for something. That's just a story of how resourceful we had to be as indigenous peoples, because we didn't have the privilege to be wasteful, and we're so wasteful in today's society. I think that we can all slow down and think about what we choose to purchase and, and how much waste we create, and I think we just really have to strive to work for that. So, we're going to be doing a lot of things to really try to address a lot of those issues in the modern world today, because it's really hard, it's just where we're at, but there's a lot of things that we can do, and we just have to really start to think of solutions when it comes to being a lot more sustainable. And supporting our local food scene, I think, is extremely important. I think the pandemic has showed us how vulnerable we can be and how quickly things can just change so drastically. And I think we have to really work hard to support our local growers, because if things really get bad sometime in the future, if we have enough food because we've supported our local growers so much, that we're going to be in a much safer position. And that's a big lesson for how indigenous communities have survived again for millennia. So there's a lot of lessons of sustainability throughout this education that we're hoping to share.
Absolutely. And, we're doing everything we can to eliminate waste wherever possible, while still meeting the needs of what we think that people are going to want to experience while we're down there. We've been just bending over backwards to try to find, keg wines, for instance, and they're really difficult. We weren't even sure that we were going to sell alcohol down there, but all of the other parks, restaurants, people love to just sit after work and have a beer or a glass of wine. And so we decided to use them. But we're trying to figure out how to eliminate a lot of the bottle waste and using compostable to-go containers. And this park is just such a great complement to that because, they use the rainwater runoff for the gray water to flush all the toilets, for instance, down there. And they've done so much to really leverage any possible opportunity they can for sustainability. So we've got great partners.
Yep. And we've been working really hard with our general manager, Rachel, who we're really excited to have on board. But we're really trying to focus a lot of the equity issues that are out there. So even something as simple as our beer and wine selections, it carries a lot of negative stigma, of course. And we just really wanted to do something different. So we've been working so hard to try and create an all BIPOC wine list, which is nearly impossible, but we're coming through and we can see that we're actually going to be able to pull it off, and we're really excited to help a lot of these producers in an industry that is so extremely non-diverse.
One of the audience members wants to hear more about native farming practices. So you'll be working with native farmers. What are they doing on their farms that may be different from farmers who supply our other foods?
Well, we support native producers as much as we can because we just, there's a huge need for that support out there. And we want to see, we can help create a large demand, and we want to be able to see a lot of this opportunity move back towards native producers since we're a native focused restaurant. Mm-hmm. So I've been on the board with Dream World Health for quite a few years, and we're very close with them. We do a lot of cool stuff with them. They're a native nonprofit farm just north of the city, I think they're by Hugo, Minnesota.
That's right.
And just for an example, but it's really important to think about the agricultural history of Indigenous peoples because agriculture spreads so vastly across North America, starting from the bottom of Mexico, especially with corn culture, shooting all through Mexico, throughout the entire Caribbean, all the way up the entire eastern seaboard, all the way up to Mississippi and Missouri River valleys into our regions. And we share so much commonality with Indigenous peoples deep in Mexico because we have all sorts of diverse heirloom corns that came from our communities, beans, squash, sunflower seeds, tobaccos, things like that. And there's just been, it was millennia of amazing organic agriculture that was had. And a lot of that history was kind of wiped off the books as Indigenous peoples were removed from these regions in the 1800s and pushed onto reservations, of course. And, it's been a real struggle. So Indigenous peoples being able to be close to a lot of these seed keepers and some of these heirloom seeds that are still out there is so special. And there's such a deep connection with Indigenous peoples to these heirloom seed varietals and the foods around us in general, because it's the foods of our ancestors and it carries so much story. So it's there's just a lot of diversity out there. Some of these seeds aren't available on the market because they're really unique and special, but we really want to help create a place where people can grow more, and we can hopefully share more and more as we create more of this opportunity for that to grow out.
So we have about 10 minutes left, actually closer to 15 minutes for the Q&A. So any questions, keep putting them in there, but let's do some of these logistics kind of fast question and answers. So types of service, indoor, outdoor, reservations.
Yes,
all of that.
All of it. So we have, we know we're going to be busy. So we're going to have a waiting list for people wanting to get seats inside the restaurant on the top floor because it's kind of small in there. There's not a lot of seats, and we are pulling back a little bit. So we'll probably be at 80% capacity inside because we still have a little bit of, obviously the pandemic is still active. And but we have this beautiful green roof above patio that overlooks the river. And then we have all of the beautiful patio down below, and there'll be lots of tables and chairs. So down below will be kind of a first come, first serve basis. But when you go upstairs, you'll be able to get your name on the list and get a table seat and just enjoy that. And that green roof is going to be a really beautiful place for people to relax and have that wonderful view. And there's just so many new wonderful places for people just to sit and camp and picnic. There's such a huge outdoor park, and it's just going to be a really wonderful thing. So
there's almost unlimited outdoor parking.
Yep.
Outdoor. There's actually not that much parking.
There's not a lot of parking,
but there's unlimited seating.
People should start walking and biking more anyways.
That's right. And I just want to be clear, there's, as I understand it, there won't necessarily be a waiting list. There's going to be a reservations only system for a little while indoor in the dining room and then on the Columbia Terrace.
Right. Yep. You'll have your name down and they'll be cycling people through as it comes up to being your turn. And then hopefully in the wintertime, we're working to doing something different and being able to turn the space into a fun sit down and really experiment with some really fun menus during the winter months. So we'll release some of that more information as we get one season under her belt, basically.
Yeah, we'll know a lot more in 2 months.
Exactly.
For takeout, so it sounds like you can probably get some takeout and go hang out in the park if you aren't eating inside. Is there a window you can walk up to? Can you order online? How will that work?
Yeah, we're going to have runners. So there'll be some people taking orders outside the restaurant. So if there's a long line, you can find another station and place an order there. And there'll be people to run food downstairs in front of the building. And there'll also be the same situation inside the restaurant. So people will be able to come into the restaurant directly, order, and there'll be a little waiting area, or they can just hang out outside and watch the beautiful stuff until their takeout food is ready. So we should have a pretty efficient takeout scene. We know it's going to be busy. We know that we've been kind of modeling some of the service towards, fast casual, of course, because it's going to be there's a lot of people in that area. We know a lot of people are just going to be coming in, grabbing some food and going, and we just really want to make it fast and efficient for them. So we'll have quite a few different areas for people to put an order in online, and there'll be some ordering that you can do directly on your phone by just scanning one of the little code things and just placing it straight through there too. So we're working through all that, but we're going to make it as efficient as possible as we can. And again, we'll know a lot more in a couple months as we actually do it.
Some people don't know how technically savvy Sean is, and so we're going to have a pretty significant QR code system.
Somebody also asks if you can purchase some of the wonderful ingredients you've all been talking about. Can you purchase them at the restaurant? And then I'm going to add to that, a lot of restaurants have been doing like take-home meal kits. Is any of that in the restaurant's future?
Well, for something that we've actually been doing through our nonprofit, so we've been building these really beautiful, healthy home meal kits. We haven't been selling them because it's been through our nonprofit, but it's something that we're experimenting with. But we are right now about ready to pull the trigger on some construction at Midtown Global Market. So there will be an Indigenous market coming soon, where people will be able to go and purchase a lot of these interesting Indigenous ingredients to help support some of these Indigenous producers out there. And we've been talking with a lot of local Indigenous producers and kind of helping them to get prepared to ramp up so we can hopefully see more and more product. But yeah, we have a lot of plans for that because, food distribution is going to be an important piece to it. We're able to get a lot of really interesting products from different groups around the country. Primarily, our menu is going to reflect right here, right where we are. But of course, we're going to be able to showcase diversity from all this wonderful Indigenous diversity. And eventually we can bring in some more Indigenous chefs from other regions around North America. And there's just, limitless opportunities for that. But people will be able to find the market probably closer after the summer, I'm guessing, by the time it gets opened at Midtown Global.
Exactly. And we do have a little grab and go area. We're trying to still figure out kind of what's going to go there. It's possible if the demand is really high that we'll purchase things from the nonprofit and just have them there. We're also Sean keeps grappling with the idea of having like certain specials that sort of raise awareness about other tribes. Like we can have like Dene Week or Choctaw Week or whatever, where we can taste or showcase some of the flavors.
Having guest speakers in and
Exactly.
musicians and artists, and I think there's so much opportunity, and we're just going to get our feet on the ground first, and then we'll start working on a lot of programming and education along with not only our own Indigenous Food Lab and nonprofit, but also with the Minneapolis Park Board.
What spices will you be cooking with? And you mentioned that there won't be any meat. Is that right? So what kind of proteins might there be?
Well,
We use a lot of meat.
yeah, proteins are easy. A lot of the recipes will be completely plant-based just because we cut out dairy and eggs and stuff like that. So, but meats, we use a lot of things, of course, like bison, venison, rabbit,
Turkey.
ducks, quails, turkey, all sorts of fish, because obviously there's a couple lakes around Minnesota, so there's a lot of fish around us.
There's only like 2, I thought.
But there's some really wonderful indigenous fisheries, Red Lake Fishery, of course, at the Red Lake Reservation in northern Minnesota, and also Red Cliff Fishery, which just opened up last year, which is up by Madeline Island in Wisconsin as part of the Red Cliff Band of Anishinaabe. So yeah, and as far as like spices and stuff go, like we harvest a lot of stuff. We use a lot of sumac. We use a lot of berries. We dry a lot of things out. We've just been really busy making all sorts of things that really kind of constitute our own indigenous pantry. So lots of seeds and nuts and things that are natural to our regions, and there's just so much. There's wonderful areas to find all sorts of hazelnuts, and our team's been experimenting with all sorts of stuff at the Indigenous Food Lab because it's also developed to be a space for research and development. And our chefs have been very creative there. And a lot of that will tie into some of the fun things that we can do at this new restaurant.
There's also a question, somebody's really excited to bring their family, but they're wondering, is there a kids menu? Are there things that kids will want to eat?
We hope so. We hope kids want to eat healthy food, and we're just going to put it in front of them. So we will do our best to make some kid-friendly options for people. And, I think we do a lot of education with younger kids, and we find the younger kids are the easiest ones to get on board, even more so than some of the adults at times, to be able to try some new flavors and taste things. But I think once people taste things, they're going to be really excited about them, yeah, I guess we'll just have to go from there because it is going to be a little bit different, and we're not going to use ironically foreign as our tagline, but I'm sure that statement will come up a few times.
Yeah, Sean will not use a deep fryer, for instance, so we're not going to have corn fries or anything like that, but there's going to be good stuff. And I think once we really start playing with the foods in the space itself, it'll be pretty clear what we want to offer. And it also depends on how the child's palate is. Some people are more interested in trying new flavors than others. So.
And then I think this will probably be our last question. And I don't know why, with the way that the weather is right now, that people are asking about winter, but they really want to hear more about your vision for this space in the winter and what that menu might look like.
Well, the goal, our hopes and dreams of that is that we really want to create a unique tasting menu, and it'll be something more like some of the higher end tasting menus you find around town. So it'll be ticketed dinners, and there'll be quite a few courses, and we'll make an experience out of it, because typically when we've done our kind of a higher end pop-ups in the past, we've brought different native chefs in from different regions and focused menus on where they're from to tell a lot of stories. There's been a lot of musicians, there's been poets, there's been all sorts of fun things. So we really want to utilize that space to kind of help push the edge of modern culinary indigenous foods, and just seeing what our amazing team will be able to come up with, and giving our chefs a little bit of a playground before we get into the really intense summer season again, which we know will just be busy.
And it's also going to be a really great time for Sean to sort of slow down and practice some of those really high-end dinners, like when he did 16 courses at the James Beard House in Manhattan, using the foods of that region. And he's done a lot of those types of dinners here as well. And so we have to really figure out kind of what the theater of it is, because we want it to be fun and engaging and super sensual in every single possible way.
Well, I'm actually going to be in Mexico during those months, so those dinners are going to be all you this time. Sorry, I forgot to tell you.
It's naughty.
Well, I'm going to pass it over to Tom, but before I do, is there just any last words that you both want to share with our audience?
We're going to be releasing the website soon, but people can check us out on the Sioux Chef site, which is sioux-chef.com, and that's SIOUX. And we're just really excited to build something unique and interesting and just kind of see where it goes. But people can always reach out to us. We're still going to be filling a ton of positions out there. So if people are interested, just go to our website. There's links. There's a job page on our website, and go from there. And yeah. I think that's all I can think of.
Yeah, it's great. There's a lot to talk about.
We can't wait to
Awesome.
see everybody.
I just by looking at the questions, the energy and the excitement and enthusiasm is out there. We're all really excited. Thank you, Megan. Thank you so much for hosting this and asking the questions and fielding them. Really appreciate just the level of skill that, you know, as questions are coming, as you're helping folks navigate this and the interview. Thank you, Sean and Dana. You know, this has been, I can't believe we're about a month out. The Water Works opens in May. In a few weeks, the park will be open for people to walk through. And then shortly after that, the lines outside the restaurant will grow. But I think what is really important, and just seeing from the comments and the questions, is that there is a hunger there's a hunger for this story, and thinking more deeply about who we are here and who's been here and that. And so thank you. It's been incredible to have you to be part of this. And boy, it's going to be a wild next few weeks. So thank you. And to everybody else out there, thank you for joining us. I know we have people joining from beyond Minneapolis and maybe even from beyond Minnesota. If you want to throw in the question, just let us know. If you think you're far, I saw somebody from New York is here with us tonight. And I just know that this work is having impact beyond our just beyond our boundaries and borders and into other people's lives. So thank you. To everybody, thank you for joining us tonight. Seeing that folks are still hanging with us, it's great. We really appreciate on a beautiful spring Minnesota night to have you all come with us. Again, the Minneapolis Parks Foundation, we can't do this work without you. I do want to thank again tonight's sponsors, Friends of the Falls. I want to thank NPR, Minnesota Public Radio, for being a sponsor. I do, again, encourage you to follow and make contributions to Natives. Great program. And then to continue to support the work of the Minneapolis Parks Foundation, you can reach us. We'll be, if you're watching us live, you've already in connection with us, but at mplsparksfdnfoundation.org, feel free to reach out. And the Next Generation Park will have another one in the fall. It's not scheduled yet, but we hope to do these again. And until then, I look forward to seeing so many of you out in the parks. I look forward to being back in the parks again and sharing good meals and food with you all. So thank you so much.